today's topic is rheumatic fever and rheumatic heart disease. It is a very interesting topic of your CVS system. So we can divide this topic under the following heading, like first definition, second one is incidence, then etiopathogenesis. Etiopathogenesis again subdivided in two subgroups. The first is infective component and second one is autoimmune component. Then morphology, which is cardiac and extracardiac. In cardiac region, first pancarditis. In pancarditis, the major lesion is Escoff's nodule. This Escoff nodule is again divided in three stages: early stage, intermediate stage, and late stage. We can continue the cardiac lesions, in which the second one is endocardium. Endocardium, in which there are valve and endocardium proper. So in valve, valvular endocarditis and mural endocarditis in endocardium proper. In myocardium, you can see Escoff's body. In pericardium, you can see fibrinous pericarditis. It's all about cardiac lesions. Now extracardiac lesions, which is 6 in numbers, we can discuss in later on. Clinical features, revised Jones criteria for the diagnosis, which are the different lab investigations, and complications and sequelae. So again I repeat these slides of subheadings. First, definitions, incidence. Etiopathogenesis divided in two parts: infective and autoimmune. Morphology, which is divided in two parts: cardiac and extracardiac. In cardiac, major is pancarditis, and the hallmark of pancarditis is Escoff's nodule, and this Escoff's nodule is divided in three stages: early, intermediate, late. Endocardium, in which there are valvular endocarditis and mural endocarditis. Myocardium, throughout the myocardium you can see Escoff's body. In pericardium you can see fibrinous pericarditis. We say extracardiac lesions, which are 6 in number. Clinical features, revised Jones criteria for the diagnosis, lab investigations, complications and sequelae. So start with the definitions. Rheumatic fever is a systemic post-streptococcal non-suppurative multi-system inflammatory disease affecting heart, joints, CNS, skin and subcutaneous tissue. So basically it is autoimmune disease, but it starts with the streptococcal infections, and that is the reason why there is a post-streptococcal word. Not one system, there are multi-system involvement, and it is a chronic inflammatory disease mainly affecting the heart, joints, CNS, skin and subcutaneous tissues. The chronic stage of rheumatic fever involves all the layer of heart, and that is the reason why pancarditis. It is a major cardiac disease known as rheumatic heart disease. So why rheumatic heart disease? Because it affects all the three layers of the heart: endocardium, myocardium and pericardium, means pancarditis, and that is the reason why it is also known as rheumatic heart disease. So it's about definitions. Now incidence, the highlighted words are the keywords. It is most commonly seen in the children between 5 to 15 years of age. It affects both the sexes, but more commonly affect the female. Again, the disease is more commonly seen in the poor socioeconomic class of society, and its incidence has declined in the developed country. but it's still common in developing countries. And the incidence is 1 to 1.5 per 1000 children. So in the incidence, the keywords are children 5 to 15 years, female preponderance, poor socioeconomic class 1 to 1.5 per 1000 children. So till now we have discussed definitions and incidence. Now the third is etiopathogenesis. The etiologic role of preceding throat infection with beta hemolytic streptococci of group A in rheumatic fever is now generally accepted theory. However, the mechanism of lesions in the heart, joint and other tissues is not by direct infection but by induction of hypersensitivity or autoimmunity. Thus, there are two components in the etiology and pathogenesis of rheumatic fever and rheumatic heart disease, and these are infective component and autoimmune component. So first is infective component. The rheumatic fever occurs following infection of throat and upper respiratory tract with beta hemolytic streptococci of group A. There is often history of infection of pharynx and upper respiratory tract with these microorganisms about 2 to 3 weeks prior to the attack of rheumatic fever. And this period is usually the latent period required for sensitization to the bacteria. So in infective component, the most common agent is beta hemolytic streptococci of group A, and it will take 2 to 3 weeks for the clinical manifestations. The autoimmune component, after infection there is formation of antibodies. As we all know that our body will produce antibody against this component. But what happens? These antibodies cause damage to the human tissue. Why? Because of cross reactivity between epitopes in the components of bacteria and the host. Here, very interesting that the epitopes in the components of bacteria and host has similarity, and that's why these antibody also called as autoantibodies. So antibody produced against the bacteria which also harmful to the host because of this similarity between epitopes in the components of bacteria and the host. The streptococcal epitopes present on the bacterial cell wall, cell membrane, and streptococcal M protein are immunologically identical to human molecules on the myosin, keratin, actin, laminin, vimentin, and acetyl glucosamine. So here epitope synchrony between the bacteria and the host, and in scientific language we can say it is a cross reactivity. So antibody produced against the cell wall polysaccharide of bacteria also harmful to cardiac valve. The antibody produced against hyaluronate capsules of bacteria also attack to the joint tissue, because this joint tissue and hyaluronate capsules have similarity, epitope similarity. The antibody against membrane antigen is also injury to the sarcolemma of the smooth and cardiac muscles because cross reactivity with it. Clear? So it's all about the pathogenesis. The main are the two component, infective component and autoimmune component. Now come on to the morphology. In morphology, it is regarded as an autoimmune focal inflammatory disorder of connective tissue throughout the body. As I have already told you in the definition that it is a multi-system involvement, and throughout the body you can see the lesions. So which type of lesions? There are two types of lesions: cardiac lesions and extracardiac lesions. in cardiac lesions of rheumatic fever in form of pancarditis, right? The major hallmark is pancarditis, and in pancarditis, the hallmark or specific characteristic lesions is Ascough body or Ascough nodule, and it involves particularly the valvular regions are its the major manifestations. And in valve, the most common valve involved is mitral valve, followed by aortic valve. In extracardiac lesions, the connective tissue at other sites like synovial membrane, periarticular tissue, skin and subcutaneous tissue, arterial wall, lung, pleura and CNS are affected. In lung, you can see chronic bronchitis. Now the cardiac lesions we discuss in detail. The first is pancarditis, and the hallmark or pathognomic features of the pancarditis is Ascough body or Ascough nodules. So what is Ascough nodules? Ascough nodules are nothing but it is a fusiform 1 to 2 mm in size, millimeter in size, microscopic structure occurring in the interstitium of the heart. They are found in vicinity of the small blood vessels in myocardium, endocardium and occasionally in pericardium. So most commonly it is related to blood vessels, and it is in which there is an involvement of the myocardium and endocardium more as compared to pericardium. They may found in extracardiac tissues also, right? So what is Ascough nodule? Again, I have repeating, it is a fusiform 1 to 2 mm in size. It is a microscopic structure. It is related to blood vessels in the myocardium, endocardium, and occasionally the pericardium. And it has three stages. First is exudative or degenerative stage. We can also call it as fibrinoid stage. The second one is proliferative or granulomatous stage, and the third one is late healing or fibrous stage. So now we will discuss stages in detail. The first stage is early exudative or degenerative or fibrinoid, right? So what happens in early stage? It is the earliest sign of injury in heart in rheumatic fever is by about fourth week of illness. So after infections with the streptococci, what happens? There will be a pharyngitis, and after fourth week, there is a illness in the heart in form of early stage. What happened initially? Edema of connective tissue and increase in mucopolysaccharides in the ground substance. There will be separation of the collagen fibers, and eventually there are fragmented and disintegrated and affected focus takes the appearance and staining characteristics of fibrinoid, and ultimately there will be a fibrinoid degeneration. And that is the reasons why the first early stage is also known as fibrinoid degeneration, because there will be a separation of collagen fibers and eventually they are fragmented, disintegrated, and it looks like fibrinoid degeneration. So first early stage occur at the fourth week of illness, and the keywords are fibrinoid degeneration. The second one is intermediate, proliferative or granulomatous stage. The name itself suggests that granuloma formations may happen. It is occur after fourth week until the 12th week of illness. So 4 to 12th week of illness, the first stage is followed by what happened after the first stage. In first stage, you can see the fibrinoid degeneration. After that, there will be a proliferations in form of lymphocytes and plasma cells, few polymorphs, and cardiac histiocytes. These cardiac histiocytes is nothing but it is activated macrophage, and it is also known as Anitskov cell. So it is also asked as MCQ that cardiac macrophage is known as Anitskov cells is appeared at the margin of lesions having round nuclei and amphiphilic cytoplasm. What do you mean by amphiphilic? It is nor eosinophilic or nor basophilic. Means it is lie between this amphiphilic, this eosinophilic and basophilic. Some of these modified cardiac histiocytes become multinuclear cells and containing 1 to 4 nuclei, and they are called as Ascope cells. So here what happens in granulomatosis stage, there will be a granuloma formation. After the early stage, there is a proliferation of lymphocytes, plasma cells, cardiac histiocytes, means Anskov cells, and these Anskov cells come together and become a modified cardiac histiocytes in form of Ascov cells. So it's all about second stage. The keywords are 4 to 12 week and granuloma in form of lymphocytes, plasma cells, cardiac histiocytes, and Ascov cells. The third stage is late healing or fibrous stage. It occurs after the 12th week and it continues till 16th week of illness. So between 12 to 16 weeks. Now what happens? The nodules become oval or fusiform in shape, about 200 micrometer wide and 600 micrometer long. And the Anitskov cells in these nodules become spindle shape with diminished cytoplasm and solid nuclei. So here the cytoplasm will be diminished. They arrange in palisaded manner. Again, this palisaded manner is already we had discussed in our practical class of basal cell carcinoma. But later on slides we can see in the slides that which types of this arrangement. After months or years, this ascope body becomes less cellular and collagenous tissue is increased and it is replaced by small fibrocollagenous scar with little cellularity. So what happened in the late stage? The late stage occur between 12 to 16 week and the lesions will be diminished in size. The Anitskov cells is also diminished in size and these lesions will be replaced by collagenous tissue and collagenous scar will be formed. Clear? So it's all about three stages of Ascop's body, and these Ascop's bodies also ask as individual short questions, right? So here you can see the palisaded arrangement of the nuclei. Clear cut palisaded arrangement. In this microscopic image, you can see the Ascop cells and Anitskov cells. The Anitskov cells is more or less spindle-shaped cells or fusiform in shape with round nuclei and amphiphilic cytoplasm, nor eosinophilic or nor basophilic, and these Anitskov cells come together and forming a larger multinucleated giant cells, and these giant cells is known as Ascop cells. Again in schematic diagram you can see the collagen fibers, and these collagen fibers in which there will be a fibrinoid collagen necrosis. You can see the plasma cells, you can see the lymphocytes, you can see the Anitskov cells. It's the activated macrophage, and these activated macrophage comes together and forming a giant cells in form of Ascop cells, and it is related to the artery. In this microscopic image, you can see the rheumatic granuloma in the center. You can see fibrinoid necrosis. Here you can see the Anitskov cells. It is more or less spindle shape. Here you can see the multinucleated Askov cells. Here you can see the lymphocytes and plasma cells proliferations, and here you can see the collagen fibers. So it's all about rheumatic granuloma formation, and it is more pronounced in the second stage of Ascop's body formation. Here again the microscopic image of rheumatic carditis in which there is Ascop's nodules, the best seen in myocardial interstitiums, in which you can see the artery, and around this artery you can see the lymphocytes and plasma cells proliferation. You can see the cardiac histiocytes, activated macrophage. It is known as Anitskov cells. You can also see the giant cells, which is also known as Askov cells. Clear? Askov cells, Anitskov cells, lymphocytes and plasma cells proliferations around the artery. You can see the collagen fibers. Clear? The next one is rheumatic endocarditis. So it's all about rheumatic pancarditis. Now in pancarditis, we can discuss endocarditis, we can discuss myocarditis and pericarditis. The first is endocarditis. So in endocardium, there are valve and endocardium proper. So in valve, you can see that rheumatic valvulitis and mural endocarditis. So first one is rheumatic valvulitis. So what happens to the valve? The most common valve involved is mitral valve, and the most common side of heart involved is left side, because left side has to pump the blood to the whole body. So more mechanical stress, and that is the reason why left side of heart is more involved, and in left side the mitral valve is the most common valve to involve. And in mitral valve, what happened? In valve, you can see that there are leaflets and cups, right? So what happens? This valve is thickened, loss of translucency of the leaflets and cups, formation of small multiple warty vegetations. Here the new word is vegetation. Vegetation is nothing but it is a abnormal growth, chiefly along the line of closure of leaflets and margin, and it are irregular and rough. So here it is very important to remember that in mitral valve what type of lesions can occur. So first the valve is thickened, the second is loss of translucency of the leaflets and cups, and formation of the abnormal growth in form of vegetations along the line of closure of leaflets and margin. So the keyword are in rheumatic valvulitis heading mitral valve, left side, and the vegetations appeared along the closure of leaflets and margins. If the condition will be chronic, then it will convert into chronic rheumatic heart disease. And in chronic rheumatic heart disease, the valve will be healed, and in which the valve will be seen grossly as fish mouth or buttonhole in appearance, and finally calcifies, and it limits the movement. So here again MCQ, that fish mouth or buttonhole appearance is seen in chronic stage of rheumatic heart disease. See, here you can differentiate various types of endocarditis with the appearance of the lesions, appearance of the vegetations. And here in rheumatic heart disease, the vegetations appeared or occur along the line of closure of leaflets and margin. And microscopically, you can see Ascop's body in the endocardium. So here in microscopically, you can see Ascop's body. And Ascop body, you already know. There are three stages, right? Early, intermediate, late. In mural endocarditis, the changes are less conspicuous as compared to valvular change. So in endocarditis, the first region is valvular endocarditis and second one is mural endocarditis. In mural endocarditis is less severe as compared to valvular endocarditis. So grossly what happened in mural endocarditis? In mural endocarditis you can see the patch like lesions of the endocardial surface in posterior wall of left atrial. So in the left atrial, you can see that map-like area, rough area, thickened area, and patch-like area in the posterior region of left atrium. And this patch or lesion is known as McCallum patch. So again MCQ, that McCallum patch is characteristic or is seen in rheumatic heart disease. So McCallum patch, please remember these words. So it's all about mural endocarditis. Now myocarditis. In rheumatic myocarditis, the gross appearance in which mostly the left ventricle is involved and it is soft and flabby in appearance. There will be a lots of foci of necrosis in form of fibrinoid necrosis, later tiny pale foci of Ascough body throughout the myocardium, and in microscopically you can see the Ascough body and you very well or very aware of this Ascough body, right? So here in rheumatic myocarditis, the keywords are the left ventricle, soft and flabby, and throughout the myocardium you can see the Ascough body. Now third one is pericarditis. So grossly you can see fibrinous type of pericarditis. In you can also called it as bread and butter appearance. So here again MCQ, that bread and butter pericarditis is seen in rheumatic heart disease. So it's about pericarditis and microscopically you will find Ascough body. So it's about cardiac lesions. Now the extra cardiac lesions, which is 6 in number, start with other systems, that is joints in form of polyarthritis, another system related to skin, subcutaneous nodules, erythema marginatum, again rheumatic arthritis, CNS symptoms is chorea minor. What do you mean by chorea? Chorea is nothing but it is an abnormal, unwanted movement, jerky movement. So chorea minor and rheumatic pneumonitis and pleuritis. So in extra cardiac lesions, mainly related to the joints, skin, CNS and lung. So major system involved is heart, followed by skin, lung and CNS and joint. Now come on to the clinical features. In clinical features, the first attack of acute rheumatic fever generally appears 2 to 3 weeks after the streptococcal pharyngitis. As you all know that it is most commonly seen in the children between 5 to 15 years of age. The disease generally present with migratory polyarthritis and fever. So after pharyngitis, there will be involvement of the heart and joint and skin and lung and CNS. The first is polyarthritis, which is migratory in nature, fever, However, rheumatic fever has widespread systemic involvement and no single specific laboratory diagnostic test is available, and therefore for the diagnosis of revised Jones criteria are followed, and these criteria are divided in two parts. So now you clearly understand what happens in rheumatic fever. The sequence start with the pharyngitis, and after pharyngitis means infective components. There is a role of autoantibodies formations, and these autoantibodies are are identical to the human tissues, and there will be a involvement of the multi systems like skin, heart, joint, lung. So which are the revised Jones criteria? So revised Jones criteria is divided in two parts, major criteria and minor criteria. In major criteria, you can see the carditis, the second is polyarthritis, chorea. This chorea has specific name has been given, and it is Sydenham's chorea, erythema marginatum and subcutaneous nodules. So these are the five major criteria. The first is carditis, polyarthritis, Sydenham's chorea, erythema marginatum, and subcutaneous nodules. Minor criteria involve clinical findings in form of arthralgia and fever, laboratory findings in terms of elevated ESR, rates, C-reactive protein, leukocytosis, and positive culture in leukocytosis, mainly lymphocytes. On ECG, you can see the PR interval will be prolonged and the presence of previous history of rheumatic fever. So these are the minor criteria, and you can stamp that patient is rheumatic fever or suffering from rheumatic heart disease if there is a presence of any two criteria individual or one major and two minor criteria at the same time favors the diagnosis. So clear, you cannot diagnose on the single test. So there will be a revised Jones criteria. This revised Jones criteria is divided in two parts, major and minor. The major are five and minor are related to clinical findings, laboratory findings, and previous history of rheumatic fever, and if presence of any two major criteria individual or one major and two major criteria at the same time favors the diagnosis of rheumatic fever. If you see the laboratory investigations, CBC is not useful. See, these laboratory investigations are always supportive to the clinical findings, right? Again, CRP and ESR, it's all elevated, but it is again non-specific. Yeah. Here, ASO titer is very useful for the diagnosis of rheumatic fever because anti-streptococcal antibody formations appear after the streptococcal infections, and in the ECG you can see prolongation of the PR interval, but it is seen in one third of patients, not all the patients. If you see the complications and sequelae, if the heart is spared, means heart is if not involved in case of acute rheumatic fever, the patient may have complete recovery. But if heart is involved, then recovery may or may not be. Once the heart is involved, it is often associated with reactivation and recurrence because of continuous recruitment of the T lymphocytes because of autoimmunity. Myocarditis is the most life-threatening due to involvement of the conduction system of the heart and results in serious arrhythmias. Long-term sequelae are the chronic valvular deformities like mitral stenosis. Initially compensation can occur, but later on cardiac failure Bacterial endocarditis and embolisms are the major causes of death. Sometimes sudden death may occur due to acute coronary insufficiency in association with aortic stenosis. So it's about complications and sequelae in rheumatic heart disease or rheumatic fever. So it's all about rheumatic fever and rheumatic heart disease. Now we can discuss MCQ. I wish that you definitely answer these questions after understanding of this lecture. The first, rheumatic fever usually follows an infection with obviously Streptococcus group A. And these are the MCQs are frequently asked in your competitive exams, right? One of the tests that is done to confirm the diagnosis of rheumatic fever. Ideally, there is no confirmatory, but you can choose among these four. The one is anti-streptolysin O antibody titer. The third, to diagnose a patient with rheumatic fever, the patient should have at least, yes, the answer is A, one major and two minor, or either two major at the same time, right? Which valves are commonly affected by rheumatic fever? Yes, answer is B, mitral followed by aortic. So mitral and aortic. A patient with rheumatic fever comes with dancing movement. How can you explain this movement? Easy. Sydenham's chorea, the major criteria of Jones. One of the complications of endocarditis, lung abscess, no, because it is not a suppurative lesion, no asthma, yes, chronic bronchitis is the answer. Liebman-Sack endocarditis associated with, very important, please remember this word Liebman-Sack. It is always associated with systemic lupus erythematosus, means it is associated with SLE. The most common site for the ASCOP body, you all know that it is throughout the layer of the heart, but most prominent in myocardium. Where can we most commonly see McCallum patches? McCallum patches is the rough, wrinkled, map-like area or patchy lesions in the endocardial surface of the posterior region of left atrium. So it is seen in the left atrium. Answer is C, left atrium. What's the most common bacteria in drug abuser? Please remember it is a frequently asked MCQs and hot favorite MCQs in competitive exam. What's the most common bacteria in drug abusers? And the answer is S. aureus. Streptococcus aureus is the answer, right? What's the most common bacteria already discussed? S. aureus. Which of the following is the one of John's major criteria? So please remember first of all the five major criteria and see whether it is present in option or not. Yes, the first one is pancarditis, fever, elevated ESR, previous history of RF. These all are involved in the minor criteria. Which of the following are the Anitskov cells? The Anitskov cells are nothing but it is a activated macrophage. Yes, see, there is long history given and similar history given in your competitive exams, but here in the history part you can pick up the keywords in obviously given that history of rheumatic fever, and as you all know that most common valve involved in rheumatic fever is mitral valve, so answer is mitral stenosis. See the importance of keywords that rheumatic fever most common valve involved is mitral valve. The most common cause of death in case of hospital patients with myocardial infarction. Here you can see the most common one is cardiogenic shock because of heart failure. So it's all about rheumatic fever. Now we quickly revise our lecture. The first definitions, as you all know, that it is non-suppurative lesions, non-suppurative, and it is a multi-system, mainly affecting the heart and followed by skin, joint, CNS, and lung. Incidence, try to pick up the keywords. It is most commonly seen in children between 5 to 15 years of age, poor socioeconomic class, and 1 to 1.5 per thousand. In etiopathogenesis, the infective components beta hemolytic streptococcus group A, pharyngitis. After fourth week, there is a illness start because of antibody formation, and this antibody is identical to the human or host tissue also. So cross reactivity. So cross reactivity, it is a main component in second autoimmune component and major antibody against these bacterial components also identical the human host tissues. So it will also destruct this tissue and in form of connective tissue. If you see the morphology is divided in two parts, cardiac and extracardiac. In cardiac, the main is pancarditis. In pancarditis, major is Ascop's nodule formations, and Ascop's nodule formations in form of three stage, early stage, which is up to the fourth week of illness in form of keywords is fibrinoid degenerations. Second one is intermediate stage. It is fourth to 12th week in which there is a granuloma formations in form of proliferation of lymphocytes, plasma cells, Anitskov cells, and Ascop cells, and fibrinoid necrosis. The third one is late healing stage in which there is a the lesions will be smaller in size and there will be amphiphilic nature of this Anitskov cells, and there will be a fibrocollagenous scar tissue formations. In cardiac tissue, you can see cardiac lesions. The, now endocardium, in endocardium, valvular endocarditis, mural endocarditis, valvular endocarditis. The most common valve involved is mitral valve, and you can see that the vegetations in the rheumatic endocarditis is along the line of closure of valves and leaflets, means along the margin. In mural endocarditis, you can see that McCallum in myocardium, throughout it is soft and flabby, and throughout you can see the Escop's body. In pericardium, you can see bread and butter type of appearance in form of fibrinous pericarditis. The extracardiac lesions, which involves the joints in form of arthritis, in form of CNS indensum scoria, in form of skin, erythema marginatum, subcutaneous nodules. If you see the clinical features in which there is a system-wise clinical features, the revised Jones criteria again divided in major and minor criteria because no single test is characteristic or is confirmed to diagnose a case of rheumatic fever. So there is a development of revised Jones criteria in which there is a major criteria. In major criteria, there are 5 headings. System-wise, minor criteria which involves the laboratory findings and clinical findings. In laboratory findings, the most commonly or significant test is anti-streptolysin O antibody titer. Complications and sequelae, you can see the various complications system-wise and sequelae. So it's all about rheumatic fever. I wish that you like this lecture. If you like this lecture, please share this lecture and like this lecture. Thank you. Thank you very much.